the biological recording company, for
Okay,
inviting me tonight.
yeah, now we're going to get on with the main event and we're going to listen to Tim's talk, Glowing, Glowing Gone, which is all about the glowworms of Essex in particular. So over to you, Tim. Really looking forward to this talk.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, no, glowing, glowing, gone. Why did I choose that title? Suggests something's going badly wrong for glowworms, I think, as others that have watched this kind of talk have suggested. But there's a question mark at the end, so it's not all doom and gloom what I'm just about to go into. Um, Change slide here. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so glowworms, my favorite insect, by a long way. I like grasshoppers, I like dragonflies, bees, all sorts of things. But glowworms for me were one of the first insects that I actually got really excited about when I was a teenager. So I've been doing this kind of thing quite a long time now. When I started out looking for glowworms, I was half the size. I didn't have any grey hair, and I had a bit more hope than I had now, perhaps. But I still love these things. Surveying glowworms, going out looking for glowworms is still one of my favourite things. So and I assume quite a few people here also feel that as well. But if not, hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll be into glowworms, and they'll be the thing you're going to want to be seeing later in the year. So glowworms, what are we talking about? Sometimes people get confused and think I'm talking about the New Zealand glowworm caves. We're not talking about that. I had a glowworm walk once where someone turned up with a net, thinking they're going to catch a firefly flying around. Not so. People think they were going to see cathedrals and hillsides full of glowworms. That's not quite so obvious these days. But what we are talking about, and what is a glowworm to start off with, we're talking about a beetle from Coleoptera, the order Coleoptera, Lampyridae family, which is fireflies, which have over 2,000 species worldwide. Sadly, we've only got two in the UK. One of them is quite scarce, the lesser glowworm, Phosphanius hemipterus. What we're going to focus on here is the one that you can more easily see still, thankfully. Um, the common glowworm, or the European glowworm, Lampyris noctiluca. So that's the species that we're talking about here. And the main part of the talk, we'll have some introductory stuff, and then we'll look at what's been done in Essex over 25 years with citizen scientists and volunteers. I must make clear here, though, that really I'm standing on the shoulders of other people here, like John Tyler, Robin Scadgel from the National Glowworm Scheme, that have been doing this way longer than I have, that got me into this kind of thing, were very helpful at the start with the Essex survey. And there's lots and lots of people that have been doing stuff on glowworms, but that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, so there's a glowworm. That's not my photo. Unfortunately, I'm not particularly good photographer, don't really have the equipment, but the people doing way better photography of glowworms than me. And that's what you're looking for, the greenish glow on a summer night or a late spring night, from a grass verge or a woodland edge or something like that. And that distinctive, almost LED green glow is what you're looking for. And the first time you see it, you can never. I remember where I was. I was at a place in Essex near Cressing, near Bulford Mill. I remember the first time I saw a glow, and that was it. I was hooked. You start seeing them, and then you want to see more. You want to see, different sites, what's happening in the habitat. It's just absolutely fascinating. And through the course of the survey, the amount of people that reported seeing glowworms for the first time was brilliant. So that's what we're looking for, the green glow of the adult female. And where are we going to be looking? Because people will say, well, where's the best place to look for glowworms? So it tends to be long established habitats, really. Churchyards, ancient woodlands that have been there over 400 years, old unimproved grasslands that haven't been ploughed or sprayed, hedgerows, again, quite old hedgerows tend to be quite good. Heathlands can be really good, short grassland. Railway lines are the one that really pull home to me what is necessary, I think, for glowworm sites. In the old days, you'd have had, before the First World War, Second World War, you would have had your habitats before grasslands were ploughed up and destroyed. Um, you know, over the last century, you would have had a lot of countryside that's completely different, and glowworms would have fitted into that quite nicely. And they had a lot of corridors to disperse between different sites. So they would have been probably quite a common thing to see. And a lot of the anecdotal evidence suggests that's the case, although not always so. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But these corridor habitats, I think now, are something that we'll come on to later in the talk and focus on. People love glowworms. I mean, I do like literature. I like writing. And old Shakespeare, good old Bill here, says that in Hamlet the Ghost, the glowworm shows a matan to be near and gins to pale his uneffectual fire. It's actually a really interesting passage there because the uneffectual fire kind of hints at the cold light. And it's fascinating to see it referenced like that. William Wordsworth again, Earthborn Star and the Pilgrim's Dream. That's the nearest I could get to any kind of Earthborn star, but not a particularly good photo. But that was taken in Haddiscoe in Norfolk a few years ago. Naturalists' view. So the people like us, the people that go out and do these things for nothing, late nights, gothic types, all that sort of thing. What are we looking for? And I mean, there's some wonderful stories with glowworms. I absolutely love this kind of stuff. There's all knock around stuff, really. Jam jars, collecting them in jam jars, being able to read by their light. I mean, that's quite difficult. I've tried it. Emergency bicycle lights. I quite like that one. I don't know how many of these you need, how many adult females you need to actually to be quite effectively a bicycle light. But you know, there's wonderful stories. There's this lovely piece from Epping Forest called "The Frog and the Glowworms" by I think it was by William Cole, Victorian naturalist, and he was just cycling along, sees a glowworm, and then he sees a frog hop over to it, and he assumes the light went out, and he assumes the frog ate the glowworm. I love all that sort of stuff that you could get published back in the day. And but in that article, there's a much more serious point. Actually, they believe that glowworms were declining even then in Epping Forest. So we're talking about the late 1800s. They think maybe snail-eating birds. It could have been due to the change of management or the absence of some of the traditional management techniques, and the succession and wooding over of some of the habitats could be more key. How is the light produced? There's a lot of studies being done on this. It's bioluminescence, so the adult female glows in the lower abdomen, chemical reaction, chemical energy with an enzyme converted to light energy. Very, very efficient with 100% of the energy turned into light, almost about 98%. So it's very, very, very cold light, which may be what old Shakespeare was referring to, the uneffectual fire. Who knows? Who knows? But probably not, but I do like that. But that's not something I'm going to talk about much here because basically I'm not a chemist. I don't fully understand half the stuff that's been done on this, but that's what you have, this process of bioluminescence, which you get in other species. What do we have here? These are the three life stages that I'm going to talk most about tonight. So the female, so this is the adult female on the right, wingless, which is key. I'll come back to that being key. If the female had wings, it may alleviate some of the problems that they have. She'd be able to fly to different sites and colonize much more easily. But she's wingless, so only able to crawl around. The male on the left there, at the bottom, with big wing cases, the elytra, flies around looking for the female's glow on these summer nights. And then at the bottom, the larva with these distinctive sort of orange edges to the segments. Sometimes they get mistaken for things like ladybird larvae and things like that. So occasionally I'll get people will send stuff in, but not often. Life cycles, I'm not, again, it's a tricky one. I don't think it's conducive necessarily to the changes in the countryside and the environment, but it spans 3 years. This is a drawing from John Tyler's excellent book, The Glowworms, 1994. And what you get in your first year after the female has mated, laid eggs. So mated with the flying male, laid the eggs hatch in the autumn, larvae go through, hibernate over that first winter, become active in that second year, go around looking for snails and slug the prey, and feeding and growing because the adult stages don't feed. So you have that main larval period of feeding growth in that second year, the summer. The larvae then become less active and hibernate again over a second winter. So it's quite a life cycle subject to a lot of weather changes as well. So it's quite complicated and could leave it exposed to problems with climate change and things like that, and habitat changes as well, of course. And then in that third year, the larvae become active again. They come out of hibernation, go around on a walkabout phase during the day because a lot of the larvae are active at night. Pupate, adults emerge. Flying male finds female, mates, female lays eggs and dies, and then the whole thing starts again. So it's quite an interesting life cycle. Now, all the different life stages, and these are from Robin Scadgill's Galaxy Picture Library. He's done a lot of photography over the years, has run the UK glowworm site. web page, etc. So good place to look for photos and things. And he's photographed all of the different life stages here. And the eggs, which are about 1 millimeter, you can see grouped together there. They can glow faintly, I think, and they tend to be laid sort of in mosses, grass, that sort of thing. I haven't really studied the eggs. I haven't really found any, to be honest. Only odd one, but you know, there are people that will breed these things. People like Martin Dale from Nottinghamshire that will they're breeding these things through. They've done so for many years, and they know all these life stages very, very well and what they need. So, but the eggs habitat could be quite, but it needs that kind of leafy, grassy kind of thing low down there, I think. The larva. So this is probably, I mean, it's in trouble for saying things like this, but you know, it's one of the most important stages. You can see here the orange segment ends there. They're quite distinctive. These are quite active at night a lot of the time, most of the time, in fact. And we'll go around looking for snails and slugs basically, and killing them, and you know, to grow through until they can pupate. So they say typically about 70 snails per larvae to get it through to adulthood. So you know, these things need a lot of snails. So I mean, it's quite incredible how they actually manage to tackle these things. And this is actually an incredible part. I mean, these photos by Robin are fantastic. Where they find a snail, they'll often ride it and bite it, paralyze it, so they inject a poison in there, which paralyzes it. It then basically just slowly digests and liquidizes the snail and takes it up like that. And it's absolutely incredible, really, to watch this this kind of thing. So, but they need to do this 70 times pretty much. So snails and slug habitats are quite important, and you need them to be, you know, the glowworms need to be where they are, the larvae need to be. So the larval habitat is probably the most important thing, I think, in the life cycle. It's got to be the right kind of thing. Snails and slugs, damp habitats can be quite important. They seem to like the edges of scrub, not in the middle of dense woodlands and things, and the edges of grass and the hedgerows and things like that, where there's more snail and slug. And we found in Essex around the edges of just patches of scrub, you get lots of glowworm larvae, lots of snails and slugs. So the belief is, from a lot of the literature, that the calcium-rich soils are ideal for glowworms because the snails there get the shell strength from the habitat they're in, from the vegetation, and the bioaccumulation that goes up, bioaccumulation process then transfers that energy, etc., onto the larva. So, but actually, you can get them in equal abundance, but down in Essex on heathland, we don't really have a huge amount of chalk grass. We have some chalk pits, etc., and you can get big numbers on both. So, obviously, on heathlands, they're probably more restricted in what their diet is, but they can eat basically many species, I think. I don't think they're particularly restricted. They used to think banded snails, but I think they take quite a lot of snails. And this is what happens when they liquidize and then just suck that up, basically, the actual the snail. So quite a gruesome thing to do, really, quite a gruesome way to go, really, but entirely essential to the glowworms that we love. A lot of people have suggested to me over the years, it'd be nice to have glowworms in the garden so that the larvae could control the snails and slugs. And I always try and put people off, say, well, actually, we don't really want to move these things if we don't have to, just because they're a predator. So the female, the adult female, the green glow that is most commonly seen by people out and about, you know, you tend to get those. I mean, it's weird though, where you can find glowworms glowing, because sometimes you'll go out and they'll be right in there, particularly if it's raining, I find that you'll just get them deep in bushes and things. They're glowing right within bramble, and you think, how are they ever going to be seen by the male flying around? And, you know, and then sometimes they'll be in prominent places up the top of grass stems. A lot of the time, actually, in short vegetation and on gravels and stuff like that down here in Essex. And you think, well, actually, it's probably quite easy for them to be seen in those positions, for the males circling around looking for the glow. So a variety of positions. But what I must say is that where you see the glowworms, these glowworms, the adult females, the habitat's going to be quite different to where you get the larvae. So you need a range. You need these open areas, grassland areas, and then there's scrubby edges for the larvae. So you need a lot of different things in the same area. Conventional wisdom say they only mate once, then they switch off. I've heard people say other things. I'm not entirely sure about that, but once mated, switch off. That could be one of the problems with recording numbers of females glowing of a summer night as an idea of population abundance, because once they've mated, they'll switch off. So the fact that you don't see it may mean they just had a successful night the night before, and you're just too late with your survey. So we do need to be a little bit careful if we're using glowworms, female glowworms, to monitor populations, but it is quite a straightforward thing to do to count them. May to August, the main season, although you do get early and late ones outside of that. Weird glowing locations. Again, I mean, there's all sorts of things reported in the literature on a pig's ear, possibly a sheep's back, I think I read somewhere. All sorts of weird, in a post office. I think one of them crawled into a post office, all bizarre things, really. The stuff is just wonderful to get in a book. If a female could fly, the last thing I'll say, if a female could fly, it would make colonizing new habitats much easier. So if it was switched around and the male didn't, and you'd have that ability to colonize. I think this is one of the key points, that if a female is, or glowworms are going to move from a site, it's going to be the larvae or the female are going to do it, and they don't move that far, and they may find things like roads and other things, barriers, housing estates, etc. So they are quite stuck where they are, which in the old days didn't matter so much, because the countryside had many more habitats 100, 200 years ago. If they went extinct at a site, they'd come back they'd colonize from the next nearest one. But here you've got quite a lot of isolated habitats. This is the male, the traditional beetle with the wing cases. That flies around about meter, 2 meters, looking for the glow, looking for females to mate with. Easiest, well, actually, probably, I don't know if it's the easiest way to see one, but if you see a female with the glow sort of switching on and off, it's often because a male will be crawling over the female, and that's the easiest way to then shine a torch on and actually find one of these, a male. So you do find, I get usually one or two of those a year doing that. But also there's other ways you can find them by having artificial lures and stuff, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So what are the problems? What problems have we got with glowworms? What are the sort of potential threats, etc.? Light pollution, another one, and particularly that follows on from the male, talking about the males, because it may be the males are distracted by street lights, artificial lighting. It might be that it makes the female less easy to see in the glare. There's a lot of research emerging on this on now. This is something I did over COVID, or the end of COVID, really, looking at glowworm populations at Sizewell and Haddiscoe. So Sizewell in Suffolk, Haddiscoe in Norfolk, whatever, and looking at distance from light source and the number of glowworms, the size of the population, which is up the left-hand side. And you can see there's a lot of low numbers. Those red dots on the left of that chart at Sizewell are they're not that distant from artificial lights, and there's hardly any glowworms there, or the numbers aren't anywhere comparative. And Haddiscoe, which is a much darker site, because A, it isn't a nuclear power station, and B, it's just, in the countryside, etc., has got much higher numbers. But again, even there's still an increase in numbers the further you get away from artificial lights. So there's definitely something there, and there may be critical levels of light pollution. So when you get within 40 meters, it's total. But then you get them under street lights. So, what am I talking about, really? But and this is Sizewell on the left, the power station, and we did surveys there, and the security lighting was crazy. Flooded a lot of the sort of sand dune, shingly kind of habitat there. And we've managed to find one in the shadow of some bramble, basically, which is quite a nice little illustration there of how it's doing its thing, but it's totally out of that glare. On the right is Haddiscoe, which is flood bank near St Olives, all the way to Lodding, I guess, as well. The area, and that's quite a long way from those lights in the distance. So there was quite a large population on that wall along there. But okay, it's not the only factor that would influence it, but light pollution is definitely an issue. This is Haddiscoe, actually. It's a beautiful place. I love. It's my old stomping ground. I've brought up and run in Gorleston and Great Yarmouth, so I spent a lot of time here. And at that site, you've got these wonderful habitats, these reed edge habitats. There's really large numbers on this site. I can't remember the actual densities, but it's one of the biggest that I've ever seen. But it was quite a continuous, with the flood bank on the left of the water, and there's a track with a load of reeds on that right hand side as you go towards the pylon. and they're all along there. It's absolutely fantastic. That may be because it's damp, the damp habitat that snails need. The edge habitat, quite nice, really nice site. Now, I'm kind of coming on to glowworms. This is probably quite an out-of-date map, to be honest. But where are they nationally? Quite widely distributed, less so as you go further north. There's a Scottish glowworm survey, I think, that's finding stuff, and tend to be quite southern, chalk downlands, etc. Chilterns, all those kind of areas. So widespread. So when you look at that, you think, okay, they are quite, you find them quite widespread. So maybe there's not too much of a problem, but we'll come on to some issues when we look at Essex, I think, about why necessarily plotting the distribution where they occur doesn't necessarily tell you everything you need to know. So if we come to Essex, if we must do, some people think, why on earth did you move to Essex? But I love it. There's a really great habitats here, the coast, the woodlands, etc. But it was at 2001 in Riddle College. I started the Essex Glowworm Survey with Dr. Robin Field. He's a great guy, invertebrate researcher as well. And we just thought, okay, what is this problem with glowworms then? Because we've been out and seen them, and we thought, well, are they actually, where are they? And are the numbers declining? So we contacted the county recorder, only 8 known sites. We thought, blimey, these are rare. That's worrying, isn't it? There's only 8 sites in a county. There could be a problem here. And we thought, well, what we'll do is we'll get counts of citizen scientists, public wardens, nature reserve wardens, etc. Standardised, as standardised as we can get, to see if numbers indeed are declining or increasing on some local sites. But we'll also get people to look at where they're seeing them just generally, without having to go back several times a year over a number of years to see if numbers are increasing or declining. So we want to know where they are, but also are the numbers going up and down on the same sites over a number of years. A lot of non-specialists, people are just interested, want to go out, got some in the garden or local nature reserve. A lot of wardens involved. Identification problems, not likely, although this is crazy, but sometimes from a distance you can see it, you think that's definitely a glowworm, and you'll go rushing over to think, oh, it's a crisp packet, light reflecting off a crisp packet or something. How have I been fooled by this? But it does happen. We've got quite a lot of coverage for the survey. Essex Wildlife Trust are very helpful. They helped us run the survey. National Glowworms website, shop and schedule. It's involved with John Tyler, was very helpful at this stage as well. BBC Essex had to go on the radio, have to, but I mean, I did. Essex Chronicle ran a little article on it, which got quite a lot of interest, which is nice to see. The problem with these things is after a few years, you do lose people. You are reliant on a few dedicated spotters and enthusiasts and obsessives to keep these things going, which is great. So what did we find? Glowworms actually, far from being at only 8 sites, are quite, and there's more sites now that they've been recorded on there. This map's not quite up to date, but yeah, there's a good spread of sites across the county. Maybe not so many in that to the north or to the top and the left of that map, but they're found in a lot of different sites. I think it's about 140, 150 different locations we recorded in that. From the original 8, we're thinking, okay, they're more widespread, a lot more widespread and under recorded than we thought. So there's a really good work that was done by people that was reporting numbers. And then we did these transects, so these set routes at different sites where you walk quite slowly along it, and record glowworms seen on either side of you, and you'd have set criteria for those walks. Usually not raining, avoid the full moon, because it might be difficult to see them, except there might be influences of that on how many you see, etc. And then obviously the start time varies depending on the sunset time, the lighting up. So as the summer goes on into sort of July, early August, obviously you've got to start earlier, etc. So we had to factor all that kind of stuff in. Similar to butterfly transects, so you're talking about set routes, which could be divided into different sections, like it is here, sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that kind of thing. But it could just be one route. I mean, in some cases, these transects are 100 meters long, and they were, monitored, and monitored 3 times in each summer. So what did we find from the surveys? This is the main problem. Although we've got them at a lot of different sites, if you look on the left of that histogram or chart, it says 0 to 10. That's most of the different counts were 0 to 10 glowworms. So, and the most frequent count was 1. So most people were just seeing one glowworm on average. So the big counts towards the right-hand side, the 91 to 100 is very few of those. Anything above 50, brilliant. In fact, to be honest, if you're seeing 11 to 20 or even 21 to 30, you're doing really, really well. That's a good sign in the context of these findings in this area. So that's the real worry, that we may have a few sites, but they're very small numbers, and that can bring issues in with genetics, inbreeding of small populations, you know, because there's not the connectivity, there's not the interchange of genetic material between sites, could be a problem. We managed to publish an article, as Kieran mentioned, on the first 18 years of the survey. We've now got 25, so hopefully at some point this year we'll have 25 years. I'll be able to update this, where we looked at long-term trends in what we found in Essex. And that's, the editor there was the late great Simon Leather, Professor Simon Leather, great guy and man there. And what did we find? So numbers over, it's all this is, numbers over the years. And you can see as you go from left to right, you know, this is a decline basically. So 75% decline over 18 years in numbers. So they're declining by about 3.5% a year, we think, in Essex. So your high numbers here, and you have your peaks, and they're quite variable, the numbers between years. The numbers of adult females on these transects, the glowing females, has declined significantly in only 18 years. So I know there's issues with using females as an idea of what the population abundance is. Really, it'd be better to monitor larvae or something like that. But this is where we started out with monitoring, and this is what happened. It's really quite worrying. Possible, some of the statistics show that adult female numbers tended to be lower after very warm and dry spring, such as 2003 or whatever. It's a very hot summer. Wet spring seemed to be the best for the high abundance of females later in that summer. So there's maybe a couple of reasons for that. More prey abundance in wet weather, easier to find, less desiccation of larvae in early females that come out of pupation in a wetter year. Whether this relates to, we've suggested it could be a climate change effect, because it's starting to, over a short term, climate change effect, whether you get this series of dry years could be a problem. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the future and what can be done about it. And that's perhaps where there's a bit of hope here, in the ways that you can mitigate for maybe some of this. These are numbers at individual sites. You can see on some of those, particularly the top row, you've got big declines. Some declined and then leveled off, some fluctuated, some increased, some stayed the same. It's not, there is a real site-specific effect here. And I think that's probably one of the most important things to look at here. You can't apply what I'm saying just generally to a range of sites. Every site is slightly different. Management differences, lack of management, catastrophic management, you know, there's various things that can happen to sites that influence all these things. Just put this in here. This is an artificial LED glowworm that you can use to attract flying males to study them. They're not just attracted to green lights, red lights, all sorts of things, white light. A lot of research, some research going on into that. I remember when I did a glowworm course in Essex, singer-songwriter Mary Epworth came along, and she had like a red bike light with her, and she just switched it on and a male went straight to it. And you think, that's a red light, what the hell is going on here? I mean, but you know, so much we don't know really, and stuff we need to know more about. Another way of recording larvae, which is quite interesting. This is actually some kind of mat, I think, that we put out for reptiles, and we'd actually get glowworm under these reptile refugia. You can actually get glowworm larvae under here as well. So that can be quite a good way to record glowworm larvae in different habitats. So, and we put these out on a sea wall and recorded them like reptiles and larvae like this. So what problems have we got, and what can we do about them then? So we've got these problems of light pollution, which are hard to solve sometimes. A lot of planning influence stuff there. This is one of down at Chafford in Essex, the chalk cliffs there, the chalk pits, quite a good area for glowworms. But what I would say here is, and I think let's go there, this sort of scrubbing over of habitats, quite favourable habitats, can be a big problem. And we've had transect sites that have scrubbed over and we've lost glowworms from those transects basically. So I think habitat management is quite an important part to play here. Epping Forest here, some like cuckoo pits, I think, in the middle of the forest. And you can see here again, maybe the glowworms have declined in Epping Forest because when it was saved and from enclosure, the Epping Forest Act and etc. may have, and they started neglecting the traditional management that would keep the scrub and stuff in check. It might be that actually when that's taken over, where you've lost a lot of your open areas through lack of grazing and pollarding and stuff, you actually may have lost your glowworms as well. Although they are still in the forest, they are quite rare. So, it might be loss of open habitats. We found, and this is a seawall at Creeksea in Essex, and protects a small area of land behind there. Known glowworm population, known by Robin Scagel. I've been down there a few times, and there's some work coming up where the bushes on the seawall had to be trimmed back or removed from the structural point of view of the seawall, to keep it functioning. And I was concerned that that would be detrimental. And actually, what happened when we went through and trimmed back some of the scrub on the edge of the soil, took out the odd patches, because this patch here had glowworm larvae around it, had snails and such, snails around it. So actually, when we went through and cut it all, actually the glowworm numbers went through the roof, and we left habitat piles where we had to remove stuff completely. So, but the numbers actually increased quite a lot, and they're still reasonably high. They may actually need a little bit more scrub clearance down there. Now, as long as you don't remove the whole lot, I think that can be quite beneficial. Again, even this little bush here, really important, because you could put mats out in the grassland areas, but actually they were around that little bush. So if you take that bush out, we could be jeopardizing glowworm population there. But actually, some of the scrub clearance that we've done behind the photo here, actually increase the numbers. So it might be that that's creating a bit more edge habitat, back to more mulched habitat with some of the chippings, etc. Just for a few years, creating the right kind of habitat. And this here shows numbers at Shafford Gorges, which is monitored, does superb work by the Essex Wildlife Trust. Numbers have declined there, though, over the years. And I think there is scrub. They are clearing a lot of scrub there, but some patches have kind of taken over a bit at places. But here along the bottom, where the sea wall, we can actually see that the scrub was cut back around here, and the numbers actually gone up ever since. So it may be that kind of light scrub clearance is actually quite beneficial. Green lanes can be quite good, but again, where they've had at Langdon Hills in Essex, where they've gone along these sort of rides, where they've created these bays into the scrub and actually just left the chippings there. The glowworms are really like that as well. So just creating those sort of scalloped edges that can be quite good for other things as well. Other invertebrates can be really beneficial. Grazing. This is Hatfield Forest, absolutely fantastic place, but they are still there, monitored by Martin Hayward, who's done that since the start. Valiant work, but they tend to be around the edges of the trees again. They don't like these big open areas of quite close cropped grass, and perhaps because there's no snails and there's no larval prey in there. So grazing is one way you need to be a little bit careful, particularly if it's quite heavy. Again, here, this is sheep grazing at a site in Essex. And that there is just the habitat's been removed too much, but there's too many sheep there that are doing a job on that. So not good for snails, not good for larvae. Now, railway lines. These could be key. So if we look at the Dr. Beeching, before the Dr. Beeching cuts to the lines, the branch lines, a huge amount of railway lines would have been very, very good for glowworms probably. After that, a lot less lines, so a lot more disused lines, and fewer obviously active lines. So the huge change in the corridor network that glowworms were probably using at that time. Now, this is Stowe Maries in Essex. This is disused railway line, obviously, and quite scrubby in places. They're still along there. They don't mind, but there's always got that issue now that there's a lot of time. There's not as much management as you'd like. It could get quite scrub. So here you could do your scallop bays into scrub, and actually it would probably be quite beneficial. So disused lines are very important. So if you want to find glowworms, a disused railway line is probably one of the best places to start looking your local line a local branch line that was closed down. This again, I'm not advising people to try and trespass on active railway lines because you get in a hell of a lot of trouble and it's dangerous. But you can see them from bridges. And we've got, this is the London line from Ipswich to London, obviously. And you see here, you find them on the edges of the bridge at Iron Latch. And you also, I'm pretty sure they're on those margins of the railway line because they've got that perfect edge habitat. The ballast is maybe quite good for larvae, snails, etc. So you've got this lovely corridor habitat, which they could be quite abundant along. And then there was a guy that in the early part of the survey missed a train from Braintree to White Notley or Witham in Essex, and he decided to walk along the line because obviously there's no more trains. He thought that's the most direct route, and he found hundreds of glowworms on that route. So, but we'd never have known about. So it could be that these active lines are actually really, really important, and there is a little bit of work, I think, now investigating that importance. This is at Haddiscoe again, that area where we said, where the dark sky sort of site where you had, had the glowworms on the bank. That's also next to a railway line. So undoubtedly they're coming off the railway line there from Norwich to Lowestoft, I think it is. So these are really, really important corridors, and glowworms will spread out into suitable habitats. And here, these are disused railway line at the bottom, slight decline in the Essex sites from the transects, but actually river corridors, another habitat, another continuous habitat which glowworms can spread along without interruption in a lot of cases. No decline in populations. The Witham River Walk is one of the best sites in Essex now. It's got nettle beds, a little bit of scrub, etc., short grass, and for the females to display on and be seen. So these river corridor sites are almost as important, if not more important, than disused railway lines in some cases. What else can be done? Coppicing. This is on Danbury Ridge. Glowworms moved in here quite quickly. The female glowworms within the first year after winter coppicing. And it could be the brash, the larvae could like all the mulch that was down there, the brash, etc. And then as you get the stools, coppice stools recover and regrow, and then vegetation comes back, they tend to move on or move out because it becomes unsuitable and overgrown again. So it's almost like an idea that you could coppice. Yeah, as you coppice, your glowworms would follow the coppice around the wood, which would be the perfect way to conserve them in an ancient woodland, particularly. What we've got here. This is, can't see the top of the slide. Yeah, no, I think this is in woodlands actually. Yeah, no, this is the numbers in woodland transects, on woodland transects. And actually there's no real significant, I mean, it's like statistical stuff there, but there's a slight decline in those woodland sites. So, but it tends to be if there's a bit of coppicing going on, that's not so bad. So actually they would have held their numbers reasonably well, but there is a decline in those woodland sites, and I think active woodland management would help to sort of increase numbers again. Going to sort of finishing up here. Translocations. Was hoping to have someone from Derek Gow Consultancy to just add a little bit on what has been done. So this is moving glowworms. This is introducing glowworms to different sites, which people have done in the past, and this is something that's happening in the southwest. Plus places like the Lost Gardens of Heligan, Cornwall, part of a national reintroduction plan, and hopefully scientifically monitored. So can glowworms be moved to sites without endangering the population where the individuals are taken from to be moved? So be interesting to see how that changes things in the southwest and how that project comes along. There's a book published about the Essex glowworm survey by the British Naturalist Association, who have been involved with glowworms for many years, since the 70s and 80s. So we're quite happy to work with them on publishing the initial results of the Essex survey. There's papers out there that probably, with silly titles. This one's like, There Is a Light That Never Goes Out. So any Smiths fans out there, anyone that, doesn't like to be too cheerful for too long, but likes good music, I couldn't resist it. But we're trying to be positive here and say there are things you can actually do to reverse the glowworms decline, the sort of things I've already mentioned, the coppicing, the scrub clearance, etc. There's a great book out there by John Tyler, The Glowworm, which is one I've read many times over the years. There's the glowworms, National Glowworm Recording website as well for you to look at. Lots of records go on iRecord. And oops, I am now finished. Thank you for listening to me, and thanks for inviting me, Kieran.